Hi Hornets! Today our project is going to be based off of the Lunar New Year. That celebration starts this week and is 15 days long. And even though it originated in China, it's now celebrated all over the world. So if you haven't learned about Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year, go back and watch the video kind of describing the history and the traditions of that holiday, and then come back and start the project with me. We are going to begin by making our background. And so you'll need some kind of black writing utensil. I'm using a Sharpie. In your Seesaw app, you'll find a kind of a drawing guide for some Chinese style architecture that you can use to design your buildings. We will begin by kind of drawing the horizon line really low on the page. And this will be where the ground is. And I want to draw it maybe an inch or two above the bottom of the page. And then above this line, we're going to be drawing in our buildings, keeping them about 2/3 of the way up the page. We don't want to go quite all the way to the top. And the handout in the Seesaw activity will help you draw these buildings, but I'm going to sketch some of mine in now, starting with some basic shapes like squares and rectangles for the bottoms of the buildings. But then looking closely at the Chinese style architecture, you'll see that the rooftops have some interesting shapes that we can draw in to make our buildings look a little bit more like Chinese architecture. A lot of the buildings have kind of tiers or stacks of these shapes on top of them. And of course, I'm always going to go back and add in some details or some textures to make my buildings just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more detailed. I'm going to add, of course, some doors and windows, and I'll keep drawing until my buildings go all the way across the page. Most of these are just basic shapes. For some of my rooftops, I'll go a little higher. For some, I'll stay lower. This one, I'm going to draw a trapezoid, and then another small rectangle, and another trapezoid. And you'll see me practicing here my overlapping. So instead of drawing over this building, I made it look like it's going behind. More details. I'm going to work on making each building just a little bit different. And I probably could go back and add some more details on some of my doors and windows, but I'll work on that a little bit later. I'm going to make my buildings pretty close together so that they're touching or almost touching. I'm just looking at my guide here to give me ideas for different shapes to draw on my buildings. I'm going to divide the different stories of this building. So I can do sets of windows here. Looks like I've got room for 1 or 2 more buildings. I'm gonna draw my rooftop in first on this one. Now remember, your buildings don't have to look anything like mine. All of our drawings can be totally different. I'm going to make this one look like it's just continuing on off the page. Put my door here. All right, now I'm going to draw down here where my horizon line is. I'm going to draw in a little curb to show where the edge of the street or the sidewalk is. And in the video we watched about Lunar New Year, they talked about the Lantern Festival. And lanterns are a really common way to decorate for Lunar New Year. So I'm going to add some lanterns strung up here in the sky. I'm going to start with some bumpy lines, and I'll just make them kind of connect to the top and then droop down in different places here. And I'm going to do 2 sets of bumpy lines, but I'm going to make them kind of crisscross. So I'm not going to touch up here at the top of the page in the same spot. I'm going to make them overlap. Then I'm going to go in and add some little lines hanging down, and I'm going to draw some basic shapes for my lanterns. I'm going to add a couple of shapes on some of these, and then either some vertical or horizontal lines, maybe some little tassels hanging down, and you can draw all different shapes. I am making my lanterns symmetrical or the same on both sides. I'm going to draw small ones where I don't have a lot of room. And you can have a lot of fun coming up with different shapes for these. Now on the next portion of this project, we will be drawing in a dragon down here, kind of in the street. And so I'm not going to bother coloring all of my buildings, but I am going to color my lanterns. And in the legend about Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, we learned that the color red is very important for Lunar New Year. So I'm going to color my lanterns red. Now I'm using a marker, but you can use anything. Crayons, pencils, markers, whatever you've got handy. Traditionally, these lanterns would also probably have some gold on them. I don't have a gold marker at my house, but if you did, or a gold crayon or pencil, you could add some gold. I think on some of my lanterns that don't have tassels, I'll go back and add some red tassels. All right, now part 1 is complete. Now we're going to work on our dragon. For part 2 of our Lunar New Year project, I'm going to be making the dragon puppet that will be in the street for the celebration. And I want my paper to be the same length as my background, but I'm only going to draw the dragon maybe 2 inches high. So I'm going to make kind of a long, skinny dragon here. Now let's start with the face, and I'm going to be using my black Sharpie again, but you could use any black writing utensil. And I'm going to start with my dragon's face over here on the right side of the page. I'm just going to draw in the middle because I will be cutting this dragon out. I'll start with the nose. So I'm going to make a line that kind of curves over to the right and then makes a little tiny bump on the end. And that will be my dragon's nose. So down, I'm going to come down and make his mouth now. I'm going to draw a short vertical line down from the tip of the nose. And then I'm going to make a line that curves back to the left, hooks around, and comes to the right. So this little shape right here will be his open mouth. Now I'll draw the bottom of his jaw with a little diagonal line kind of coming in. And then I'll come back to the left side of the page. But for this line, I'm going to come straight over until I get to where the mouth ends, and then I'm going to curve down a little bit. Now I'll go back to the top of the face. For the top of the face, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of curve up instead of down here, but I'm going to make a little bit of a bigger curve. Now this will be my dragon's head, so I want to add in his ear before I run out of space. I'm going to draw 2 lines here to make his ear, make sure his head connects to his ear. And then I'm going to draw some bumpy lines like scales to connect the top of his head, where his ear is, to the bottom of the head. Now we'll draw in a few little details for the face. On his nose, I'll make a little loop here to make a big nostril. And for his teeth, I don't want to have to cut that out. So I'm going to draw a zigzag line going all the way from top to bottom of this shape here till I get to the end of the mouth to draw the teeth in there. Next, I'm going to draw the eye. In the center of the face here, kind of between the ear and the mouth, I'll draw an oval, kind of a diagonal oval. And then on the right side of that oval, I'll draw a circle inside of the oval, and then another circle inside of that. Now this smallest circle, I'm going to fill in almost all the way, but I'm going to leave a teeny tiny little dot for a highlight. Now I want to draw my dragon's eyebrows so he looks a little more fierce. So I'm going to follow along the top of the oval shape here and kind of add a long curved line that kind of just swoops over the eye. Now I'm going to make the top side over here pointy and the bottom side rounded. So I'm going to round here, follow that line back to the end and end with a point. Next, I'm going to draw the body. Now, I'm going to draw the top of the body first with kind of a wavy line. Now, I don't want to draw lots of little wavy lines. I want to draw 2 or 3 big waves. So I'm going to start kind of where the ear is, and I'm going to wave over, under, long waves over, under until I get to the end of the page. Just curved up a little bit right there. Now notice I only have 2 waves here. They're not little tiny ones. That would be too hard to cut. Now at the bottom, I'm going to repeat the exact same line, but at the end here where it touches, it's going to come to a point. So I want to start as far away from that top line as possible, way down here. But as I follow the line, I'm going to gradually, slowly get a little closer, little closer, little closer until they touch. Now here's my dragon's body, and typically these dragons are held up by not just one person but lots of people. They can be very long, some as long as 200 feet. So we're going to make it look like there are people standing under the dragon that are holding it up. And to do that, I'm just going to draw a couple lines sticking out. I'm going to draw 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, and that makes 2 legs. And then I'll draw a foot at the end of each leg. I'm going to start with the left foot first, make it facing to the right. And then when I draw the second foot, it'll be kind of peeking out behind the first one, like that. Now I'm going to repeat that every couple of inches. So I'll leave a few inches and draw my 3 vertical lines. I'm trying to keep them about the same height, and my 2 feet. Then I'll leave a little more space, add my 3 vertical lines, and my 2 feet. I'm going to add 1 more set of legs. 1, 2, 3, foot, foot. Now, my dragon has the feet of people kind of sticking out below it, but it doesn't have its own arms and legs. And I'm going to go ahead and add those in. Now, I'm going to add an arm up front and a leg kind of in the back. I'm going to start by drawing a line that curves up and over. And I am going to cross over his body here, just in between these front two sets of legs. That's going to be the top of his foot, and I'll conceal that line here in a moment. Now I'm going to draw two diagonal lines kind of coming down, and I don't want to get too close to the legs here. Now, keeping in mind that I'm going to cut this out, I'm going to draw his foot here, and I'm going to make little toes, but I'm going to draw them big enough that I can cut them out. And then I'm going to repeat that step back here between the back two sets of legs. I'm going to make this back leg a little bit bigger. My two diagonal lines. And then his little toes. Now, my dragon is finished, but I think he needs some more detail. So keeping in mind that we're cutting this out and we don't want to draw anything that will be too hard to cut out, I'm going to add in some spikes on his back. And I'm going to draw kind of a curvy spike, but you can draw something different. If you want to make regular zigzags, make sure it's something you're going to be able to cut, because we will be cutting around the edge. I'm also going to add some big scales to his body. And I'm just going to draw bumpy lines. But when I draw the second row of bumpy lines, I'm not going to match them up. I'm going to make sure that the second row hits the first row in the middle. So it creates a scale pattern. Now, I probably won't do scales all the way down the body because I want to draw some other things too. I'm going to draw a little bit past this first leg. And remember, you can do something completely different. And then I'm going to add in some swirly lines. Maybe you'll add zigzags. Maybe you'll add cloud shapes. Or maybe you'll add a different texture. It's totally up to you how you want to decorate your dragon. In China, dragons are a symbol of good luck. And that's why you'll always see them during Lunar New Year celebrations, even if it's not the year of the dragon. Now, I'm going to add a little more detail to my legs here, especially because I want to kind of cover up the line that I made there. I'm going to add some scales. And you could do something different. You could even just add stripes to the legs. That would be a good way to hide that line. All right, now that my dragon drawing is complete, I'm going to color it. And you can use any art utensils to color: crayons, markers, pencils, whatever you have on hand. All right, now that our coloring is complete, it's time to cut and glue our dragons onto our background. Now our Lunar New Year dragons are complete. Don't forget to take a picture of your artwork and upload it to the Seesaw activity so I can see what you made.